All right, what up, everybody? Welcome to a Thirsty Thursday edition of The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotzia. We're getting you set on the DFS and sportsbook side of the NBA before the league hits the All-Star break tomorrow. So a 55-minute show today, hopefully. We got a fantasy breakdown of tonight's 10-game NHL slate as well. But first, we're putting a DraftKings spin on the latest NFL headlines. Good morning to DraftKings contributor Pierce Dietrich. It's an absolute pleasure to see you. Thanks for taking some time out of preparing for the Daytona 500 to talk NFL with us, Pierce.
Yeah, it's a jam-packed NASCAR week. It's just not the Daytona 500. You got the dual races tonight. You've got the truck race on Friday. You've got the Xfinity race on Saturday. And I'm sure no one watching right now really cares about that.
No, absolutely. We will definitely take your word for it. And everybody here watching right now needs to join us tomorrow because there's going to be an epic clash between Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich talking Daytona 500. By the way, a Millie Maker available on DraftKings right now. People do care, Pierce, because people want to make money. But let's talk NFL here. The Vikings officially hire Rams offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell as their next head coach. So he has experience, right, working with Kirk Cousins from their days in Washington. Will he help get the most out of the veteran quarterback, I should say? Or are you thinking Cousins has like a new home next year? What do you think?
I think Cousins is going to stay put. All these quarterbacks are going to stay put. Where are they going to go? Who are you going to replace him with? And I don't think Cousins is as bad as we give him the rep. You look at Matt Stafford. I know everyone loves Matt Stafford this year because they won the Super Bowl, but Matt Stafford for the Detroit Lions wasn't that great. They weren't really going to the playoffs that often. And I don't think that Stafford is that much better than Cousins. Maybe that's too much of a hot take. How about this? Jimmy Garoppolo is not better than Kirk Cousins. And Jimmy Garoppolo was in a Super Bowl. He was in an NFC Championship game. Cousins is fine. People expect some ridiculous things from Cousins. He has talent. He has the weapons. Has he been inconsistent? Yes. There are plenty of quarterbacks that are inconsistent. But what he reminds me of is Joe Flacco. You look at Joe Flacco's career. He had the talent. He had the weapons. He was inconsistent. But the thing that always bailed out Joe Flacco was he always had an elite defense. So when Joe Flacco had a poor performance or Joe Flacco had a bad game, he could get bailed out and they would still win games. Cousins has never had that. If Cousins is not on fire every single time, then they lose games and people blame Cousins every single time. They never once think, hey, maybe it's that defense that's letting them down. So if you're going to improve this team, I don't think it's necessarily O'Connell dealing with Cousins as much as it is fixing some of the small holes that they have in the defense.
Yeah, he posted some pretty solid numbers under O'Connell, too, in 2017 in Washington. So north of 4,000 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 13 picks, a league-high 4 game-winning drives that year. That's something that Jeff Ulrich would tell you is not possible, especially in prime time now.
Well, definitely not like primetime Thursday games. Those tend to be his worst games. Hey, a little bit better on Monday nights. But I don't think Cousins is all the weapons are there. He just needs to be a little bit more consistent. And, hey, if Aaron Rodgers isn't in Green Bay next year, then they definitely have a shot.
Yeah, what about a bold prediction of Cousins ending up on the Broncos, where it's bolstered by the presence of former Vikings executive George Patton? I mentioned that yesterday, and ex-offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, who's now the general manager there, dude. Huh? Bold prediction? Fire take?
We're getting a little crazy with these musical chairs because of this coach is related to 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. We can connect all these guys to different places. It looks like a cork board with strings going every which way. Yeah. Let's just sit tight for a little bit.
Just so you know, you are 1 degree away from Kevin Bacon because I have interviewed Kevin Bacon before. All right, congratulations to you. Hey, let's go out to Vegas here. There's another quarterback with a new head coach, and reports say Derek Carr and the Raiders are nearing an extension in the range of $40 million per season. Is he worth that, Pierce, or should Josh McDaniels just rip the Band-Aid off and look for a new guy?
He's not worth that, but the way that we value quarterback, which is wrong, right? We want to look at a quarterback and say they have a tangible value, and it should be connected to their stats and their performance. But that's just not the reality of pricing. That's not how pricing works in the real world. Things don't have an intrinsic value. Price is connected to supply and demand. And the supply of elite able quarterbacks or just able quarterbacks is low, and that pushes the price up. The demand for able quarterbacks is high. That pushes price up. So sorry for the microeconomics lesson, but these are just facts. These are laws that we can't deny. And that means Derek Carr is going to be too expensive. You just have to deal with it. I mean, what else option do you have? There aren't any quarterbacks out there in the market. If you're going to trade, then you're going to pay a high price via a trade. The only alternative that I see that maybe the Raiders or any of these teams explore is maybe in the USFL spring season, we see some quarterback emerge, and then you sign him as a backup where he comes in and competes for a job. But outside of the USFL star being born, I don't know where these teams are going to get these quarterbacks.
Yeah, I guess like the benefit of the extension too would kind of help him restructure like the cap long term and build, I guess, build around him, add some pieces to it because they're in win now mode. I know Mark Davis is like a huge fan of his, so he's probably not going anywhere if the owner really likes him.
I just, whether they like him or not, who's gonna replace? What are you gonna do? It's just gonna be, I would say, a lateral move. I don't see an upgrade happening. He's familiar with the system. He's familiar with the team, and he may just hurt the team by shipping him away.
Yep.
It might hurt some of the morale. Then you got to bring in a new quarterback. Then it has to convince all the players that, oh, I'm the guy. You can support me. Why even go through that?
All right, my man. I guess it's not time for the Marcus Mariota era to begin there yet. Let's go from McDaniels to McDaniel. Dolphins' new head coach, Mike McDaniel, joining friend of DraftKings here, Dan Le Batard, this week to discuss his team's offense, more specifically wide receiver Jalen Waddle, and the leap he could make in his second year under McDaniel. So listen to this.
Outside of Tua Tagovailoa, give me a name, please, just to excite the Dolphin fan base, where you are looking at the roster and you're like, oh, I can get something special
Waddle
out of that guy. Okay.
Waddle.
You're promising us. You could promise it. Waddle, if he's healthy, you're going to see a little Deebo Samuel. You're going to see someone who's used super versatile.
He's a phenomenal talent. And guess what? The best and easiest way to get yards is give it to a really talented player. The 49ers, the last 4 or 5 years, have led the league in yak. The reason is because we're addicted to getting our skill position players that are good with running the ball. And so, yes, I would start him in fantasy. I think you should see some jumps in the Miami Dolphins offense next year.
There you have it, Pierce. Quote, I would start him in fantasy. I love that dude, by the way. Could you see Waddle handling a Deebo-like role? Like, does that excite you about his fantasy outlook? I know Deebo's got 35 pounds on Waddle. Deebo takes a beating.
That coach is a clown.
What?
That is fake news.
What are you talking about?
I cannot believe he did that. Congratulations, Dolphins. You've got yourself a coach who's lying to you and deceiving you right out of the gates. The reason why the San Francisco 49ers were leading the league in yak, it wasn't because their coach is a genius. It's great. Like, he's talking about how smart he is. It's because their quarterback couldn't throw the ball 5 yards downfield. That's why they're so high in yak. It's not their game plan. Jimmy Garoppolo can't throw downfield. What are we talking about? And if we want to talk about Waddle, Waddle will be fine. Tua will be fine. They had the talent. They had the skill. It's not going to be game plan. It's not going to be the genius, self-proclaimed coach that's going to make Waddle this great fantasy play. It's about their offensive line. PFF grades them as the worst pass blocking unit in the league. Tua had a 2.1 second pocket time last year, the worst in football. He constantly had to run. He constantly had to pass the ball quickly because they couldn't block. And still, even though they changed their scheme so that they would adapt to a bad pass blocking unit, he was still pressured more than anyone else. Waddle can have a good season in spite of that offensive line, but his fantasy numbers are going to be limited by that offensive line. I'm tired. That guy's a clown.
What? Okay. He's going to be better than Adam Gase, right? People are saying he's this genius, but that's what people said about Adam Gase.
He's saying that about himself. That's never a good sign.
What are you talking about, man? You got to have confidence in yourself, dude.
That's arrogance. Roll that clip back. Tell me that's confidence. That's arrogance.
All right, I'm going to remember that next time you are building up this thread on Twitter about all these books you're reading, you genius. McDaniel, though, also promised to get all the greatness out of Tua. Yeah, Pierce. Well, up in Indianapolis, the Colts don't sound like a team that has a whole lot of confidence in its quarterback. The future of Carson Wentz is kind of up in the air. Should the team find an upgrade, or should they continue to build with Wentz? What do you think?
Yeah, it would be great to find an upgrade, but how are you going to find an upgrade and it's not going to cost you a king's ransom in a trade? And then you pretty much are going to hurt other parts of your future or other parts of your defense or offense to upgrade at quarterback. I don't see it happening. The free agents market is all lateral, if not downgrades. I think they're just going to have to be stuck with this guy. If you do work a trade, then that means you're finding a team that's willing to trade their quarterback. You usually don't get rid of a quarterback that you're satisfied with. If you're willing to trade or move your quarterback, it's probably not that good. If you got a car that you like, you keep that car. You don't trade it in. And the last thing you do is say, hey, I want that car that you don't want. There's problems with that car, obviously. So you stick with Wentz. This is his first season. He wasn't terrible. He missed the preseason. He's had a couple rough years, maybe a little bit of continuity. He's got enough weapons around him. If there was a better player out there and it wasn't going to hurt other parts of your team, sure. But there isn't. There's nowhere else to go. Just stick with Wentz and hope that he doesn't hurt you too much.
Yeah, he contract could also be an issue with that dude. One of the most disappointing fantasy seasons here, Pierce. That belonged to Seahawks wideout DK Metcalf. So, dude did just have a screw removed from his foot like a day or two ago. Maybe he'll be a little undervalued next season. Who knows? If Russell Wilson returns, he could be okay, right? But if he leaves and Seattle can't find like a top 15 replacement or so, Metcalf could crash. Like, how do you accurately value this guy?
Yeah, there's a lot of different variables at play. Russell Wilson might have been the problem. With Geno at quarterback, Metcalf seemed to have better games and had a better connection or repertoire for whatever reason with his quarterback. You look at Russell Wilson, one of the worst bad pass ratings in the league, bottom 10, 19.5% bad pass rate, one of the worst of his career. His on-target percentage was 76.5, which was in the bottom half of the league. Just not a good season for Russell Wilson, so maybe that'll be an upgrade. I don't know. Wilson also, his attempted air yards led the league, so he was chucking it downfield. But you look at completed air yards, and he ranked in the bottom third. So he's flinging the ball over the field, but they just weren't on target. And another theory that I'll float here about DK Metcalf, he might be spending too much time in the gym, getting bulked up too much. I know it might sound crazy to some people, but if you remember David Boston, he was going to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver. He got huge, and then his career just ended. Some people think that bulking up too much slowed him down. It cut down his agility. It cut down his arm extension. And you look at guys like Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, they never put on a pound, and they're Hall of Famers. DK Metcalf, suddenly his body's falling apart. Suddenly he's not having good seasons. I don't know. I think there's something to think about there.
I mean, the best wide receiver in the NFL this year was Hunter Renfrow, and he looks like a dude at Best Buy trying to sell you speakers like for your car,
Yeah, that's definitely. I don't know how to respond to that, but Cooper Kupp isn't really bulky either. I guess would be the response.
No, he doesn't. Yeah, Cooper Kupp looks great, and he's got the beard, little facial hair. So does Hunter Renfrow. Something to keep in mind there. Pierce, you were fantastic. Start preparing for your NASCAR showdown with Jeff Ulrich tomorrow. I'm not kidding you. It's going to be absolutely nuts. Also, we're going to get a price check, Daytona 500 price check from you. And everyone, again, Millie Maker available on DraftKings right now. Let's do some NBA DFS right after this break. It is the final day of the NBA season. before the All-Star break, so you need to make sure you're not rostering a dude who's starting vacation early. Like Jesse Caulfield is always on vacation, but these three guys are not. DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne, Matt Meiselman, and Nick Fryer. Before we price check, though, dudes, let's talk about Anthony Davis, like Mr. Glass here. The Lakers' big man, he left last night's win over Utah after suffering an ankle injury, x-rays negative, so that's good. So just a bad sprain we're talking about. Nothing new. AD has been in and out of the lineup so much during his LA career, but if he misses a significant amount of time, what impact do you think this will have from a DFS or sportsbook perspective with this Lakers team that's really struggling to put it together down the stretch, Garion?
Yeah. Well, they don't have that much power forward depth, if we're just being honest. This will probably just result in, the Lakers' plan A for any contingency, which is make LeBron do it. And, it's probably what's going to happen. LeBron's going to see his usage go up. I don't know if we could really see him play any more minutes than he's currently playing, but the fear here would be that this leads to essentially the exact scenario we saw play out the last time Anthony Davis missed an extended period of time for the Lakers, which is it forces LeBron to do more and then LeBron gets hurt. It's sort of a perpetuating cycle. This is just going to mean more on the plate of LeBron James and probably Russell Westbrook, for as much as Frank Vogel might not want that to happen. I mean, that's sort of what happens in these 3-star systems. If you lose one star, the other 2 stars have to take on more.
All right, Nick, they're currently the 9 seed in the Western Conference. Like if AD misses a little bit of time or continues going in and out of the lineup, LeBron, we know how banged up he's been. He says, I can't put this team on my shoulders by myself, even though he built this team. Could there be a threat? How big of a threat is it that they're going to miss the playoffs?
I think it's a pretty sizable threat, even if AD was in the lineup, because look at where they are in the standings right now, Emerson. I don't have any confidence in this Lakers team, and I'd be lying if I'm saying I'm not enjoying it a little bit. But if we look at it from a DFS side, Garen hit on it a little bit. LeBron becomes every single night one of the best high-priced options every single night. Normally I'm not going and backing him this season, but now when AD's not in, he was outstanding. And then if you look at it from a sportsbook side too, his triple doubles are going to be in play quite a bit more too. He had a few when Anthony Davis was out, so I'd be looking into those on a night-to-night basis. Obviously, he's not going to do it every single night, but still something to take a look at. And if not, you can look at his points plus assists and plus rebounds totals too. And Russell Westbrook too, I know Gary hit on a little bit. He becomes more viable. I still don't like him a whole lot more. There is value to be had on this team, but I think the biggest thing is LeBron is going to become one of the better high-priced options on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, he's going to have to be moved to the 5 now once again, which he's been pretty good at in Davis's absence, Matt. Also, I'm looking at the Tinseltown franchise here, one of the toughest schedules left in the NBA. Lakers 10-11 without Davis this season, still 4 games under 500 right now.
Yeah, so I agree with these guys in terms of DFS, where the impact is really just LeBron. Like, Dwight Howard's not going to play enough where we're going to be talking about him every day or anything like that. This is really more about LeBron than anything. From a sportsbook perspective, I actually don't know that if we're talking about futures odds, that this is going to matter that much. If LeBron gets hurt too, having to take on a larger load, then yes, then that will obviously matter. But my assumption has been the Lakers are going to be the 9 or the 10 seed regardless. If they win 32 games or 37 games or maybe even 39 games, like anywhere in that range, that most likely winds up as them being in the bottom half of the play-in. So we could get the disaster scenario where LeBron gets hurt too and the Lakers miss the play-in entirely, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think without Davis, the Lakers are going to be a slightly below 500 team going forward. They're going to wind up as the 9 or the 10 seed, and I think that's where they were going to end up anyway. So as long as LeBron can stay healthy and Davis can come back for the playoffs, I think the Lakers still should be okay with a chance to win 2 play-in games and get into the real playoffs.
All right, well, let's get to tonight here, guys, in price check. Again, final day before the All-Star break. Who's your guy above 10K this evening, Nick?
So normally I'm a Joel Embiid guy. I know he had a rough game last time out. But I'm not going to go with Joel Embiid again in this one. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the guy tonight for me. I know we have Luka Doncic as an option as well too. But Giannis, he's coming off with the Bucks have played. This is their 3rd game in 4 days, but Giannis did have a rest day. Philly's coming off that brutal game, and I know you might think, Philly's going to bounce back. There's no way they can do what they did last time against the Celtics. I do think to some extent it won't be that bad necessarily, but I think what we've seen since they've kind of moved on from Seth Curry and Andre Drummond too, they just don't have have that offensive firepower right now until James Harden gets back in the mix. And if you look historically at how Giannis has done against Embiid, Giannis has done pretty well against Joel Embiid. He hasn't really had many issues in terms of scoring, in terms of rebounding. Joel Embiid still done fine, but when we're looking at it from a DFS perspective, he's not holding up, the salary that he has tonight. And also Giannis, forward eligibility, that is important because there are a few centers that I like tonight too that I think are going to provide some good value.
All right, Gare Bear, who is your guy over 10K?
Got to agree with Nick. I think it's Giannis tonight among the studs. I know this is kind of funny to say on the heels of getting absolutely demolished by the Celtics, but you look at this game on paper and think this is going to be a relatively neutral game script. This should be one of those contests where Giannis is forced to play more minutes than he would normally have to do on your average Thursday night. And the last 4 times that Giannis has played at least 34 minutes in a game, he's averaging 74.1 DraftKings points per game, which makes a lot of sense when you consider that across his last 11 games in general, he's averaging 1.8 DraftKings points per minute. So if you're going to get Giannis towards his 90th, 95th percentile in terms of minutes played volume, you just have to play him on those slates.
All right, Matty, you have just 3 guys to choose from here. So which one you going with? You got Luka, you got Giannis, you got Joel.
Yeah, I agree with these guys on Giannis over Embiid. And I think the reason for that, a lot of it for me is just the position, where at center, I think there are going to be a lot of value plays to look at, especially if Christian Wood doesn't play tonight. We have some cheaper Rockets, but I think the cheaper Clippers too. So I kind of want to save the center slot with Embiid. And Giannis looks good to me. Part of also what's happening with the Bucks is they just don't have a lot of depth right now. They traded away a couple players. They have some injuries to their supporting cast. And Giannis is just I think he's more well-rested than these other players. Giannis got a day off last week, and he looked really good coming back against Indiana. I think Embiid might be a little more tired. Luka's had to do a lot more with Porzingis out of the lineup. And even though the Mavericks beat the Heat on the road, Luka was not actually that great in that game. It was mostly the Mavericks' defense that won that for them. So I think Giannis just looks fresher right now. Truthfully, though, you can't really go wrong with any of these guys. They're all just legitimate fantasy studs any night. But I'm leaning Giannis over the other 2.
All right, in the 8K or 9K range, who's in a good spot to deliver the goods here, Gary? And once again, a fantastic article available here on DK Nation with so many options to choose from. You are literally putting this company on your shoulders like boulders and helping us produce cash.
It means a lot to me. If I could blush on cue, I would, buddy. Yeah, this is an interesting price range. I think there's a lot of guys who are pretty viable, but the one who sticks out, and this is a little bit dependent on injury news, but maybe not as much as some people might think, is Bam Adebayo. You just look at Bam, he's underpriced. He's only $8,400. He's been absolutely phenomenal in the month of February as he's kind of gotten his bearings back from that extended injury absence. He's averaging about 23 and 11 across his first 8 games in the month. And his usage rate, which, for context, was at 22.2% in January, is up at 29.5% in February. And I think that's kind of like the perfect storm of not only Bam being back and being in a groove, but Kyle Lowry being back on the court and knowing how to feed someone like Bam Adebayo. So you look at Bam, there's no Tyler Hero in this game. There's a reasonable chance that there's no Jimmy Butler in this game. It's an up-tempo matchup against the Hornets. Charlotte has given up the 4th most DraftKings points per game to opposing centers. I still like Bam even if Jimmy plays, but if Jimmy doesn't, this is like a dream scenario for Bam.
Yeah, Bam, according to you, been in a serious groove to begin February. Matt, what do you want to do in this price range?
Yeah, the injuries are going to make this tough. So my hunch is that Butler plays, but if Butler doesn't play, and he did play with a questionable tag last game, but if he doesn't play, then Bam would be my choice. But if Christian Wood plays, this is another uncertain guy who missed last night's game with an illness, or I think it might have been a migraine. But he may be back if that's just a one-day thing. Christian Wood's $8,100 for a matchup against the Clippers. And yes, this would be a tough thing for the Rockets on a back-to-back after a tough game against Phoenix last night. But Christian Wood didn't play in that game. So it's possible that we see Wood get more minutes than normal because the rest of the players who were filling in for him are tired. The same could be true for Kevin Porter Jr. I think the Rockets tend to just want to play all of their guys roughly 24 to 27 minutes, just give everyone a chance. But it was a hard game for them last night in Phoenix. They played right up into the end, no garbage time. It was actually a close game. So if Christian Wood's out there, I think there's more upside for him than people realize.
Alrighty, Nick, what do you think? Who do you want to roster?
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with the guys on Bam Adebayo in this one. He was the guy right away I'm looking at 8.4K going up against the Hornets. Pace up spot anytime going up against the Hornets. I'm a broken record at this point. And they struggle against opposing big men, as Garion highlighted. And all around, defensive rating, not strong in that category either. Bam, so I'm with Garion where if Jimmy Butler does play, I still like Bam Adebayo in this situation. And if you're looking for another play in this range on the other side of the matchup, Terry Rozier is a guy I like a lot too tonight. I think he's at 8.2K. I know that the Heat are good against opposing point guards, but when it comes to shooting guards, not necessarily as much. And with Gordon Hayward out, Terry Rozier has the second highest usage rate on the team, second highest field goals per minute on the team as well. All just trailing ball in those categories. So I like him a lot in this one as well.
Gentlemen, we're nearing the price range of the working man, around 6K or 7K. Who you got, Matt?
So I think this player is going to be pretty popular, but I kind of just have to go with him anyway. Reggie Jackson, to me, is way underpriced right now. Norman Powell being out, I think, has just added some extra usage for him. But for whatever reason, Jackson has gotten some big minutes lately. Like in the past, we've had injuries where Eric Bledsoe was out, let's say, who's not playing anymore for the Clippers, and Powell, who's out now. They traded some players away. But I think the Clippers are just intent on playing Jackson a ton of minutes, and he's played really well. So the only way that doesn't happen tonight, I think, is if we get a blowout. But even so, Jackson is probably the guy who's going to lead that team to the blowout and should have a big enough fantasy game. So 6,800 might just be a price that we don't see for Reggie Jackson after the All-Star break. This could be a player who's 7,500 or more on just about any game. And this is a matchup with the Houston Rockets, who are one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So until Paul George comes back, I think this is just way too low for Reggie Jackson in general.
All right, Nick, who's your dude in this price range?
We talked about centers, right? And in this price range, Andre Drummond, 6K going up against the Wizards. I like him a lot. As long as KD and Kyrie aren't on the floor, which that's going to be the case because Kyrie, this game is being played in Brooklyn, so he cannot play. I like Andre Drummond for the time being. We'll see what it looks like when those guys come back, but for now, we're in a good spot, especially against the Wizards, who don't do well against opposing bigs. And look no further than what happened last night. Tristan Thompson just went off for 17 points in 21 minutes against the Wizards, and it seemed like all their bigs had pretty good rebounding numbers as well, the Pacers, that is. And then when you look at the over, too, in games when the Wizards are on the second leg of a back-to-back, the over is 6-1, and the Wizards have the 8th worst defensive rating in the league this season.
All right, Garion.
Yeah, I've just got to echo what Matt was talking about. I mean, Reggie's just too cheap tonight. 6,800 for someone who, across the last 3 games he's played, which is the same amount of time that Norman Powell has been out for the Clippers, he's averaging 38.1 minutes per game and has a team-high 27.6% usage rate. I mean, we all know that Houston is the dream of all dream matchups for DFS this season. If you're going to give me Reggie at, even like 34 to 38 minutes, even if he hits the low end of that spectrum, I just don't see how he doesn't bring back value tonight.
Now to the peasants. Less than $6,000. Nick, have at it.
You're on fire today, Emerson, I got to say. But Terrence Mann is one of my guys that I like a lot in this peasant range, I guess how we're putting it right now, going up against the Rockets. I know he just had an awful game, still got plenty of minutes in that one, but he's in a pace-up spot against the Rockets. I'm not assuming that this trend is going to continue. Of course, the Rockets have the worst defensive rating in the league, and they're not good against opposing wings either. The guys have talked about the Rockets, too, and how there's value if Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr., if they don't play tonight, obviously didn't play last game. Dennis Schroeder, I like him a lot now, and obviously he popped off last game. And then Sengun at 4.5K, I like him in that spot as well.
Help me, I'm poor, Garion.
Me too. I think that this is basically one of those spots where just pick whoever you want or whoever fits from this Clippers-Rockets game. I mean, it's the highest total game on the slate. We still have to wait out just whether or not Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. are going to be available for this contest. I mean, if Porter Jr. isn't playing, I don't know if they're going to let Eric Gordon play 38 minutes back-to-back nights heading into the All-Star break, but they didn't trade him, so I guess they don't care about his well-being. So they might just do that again. He's only $3,800, took 24 shots last night. Dennis Schroeder also played 38 minutes last night as, the only point guard remaining on this team's roster. Alperen Sengun, as Nick was talking about. Like, there's a bunch of different ways to go here, and the Clippers also are just a team like Nick Batum, Terrence Mann. Like, there's just a bunch of directions you can go here in this particular contest where value just seems like it's apparent everywhere.
Alrighty, Maddie, help me out, please.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a team tonight. Well, this is a hunch that I'm just kind of making up on the fly, but I think there's some logic to it. I think the Wizards could end up just having no one expensive on their team playing tonight. This is the 4th game in 6 nights, and Kyle Kuzma has been playing massive minutes. Last night he shot 9 for 27. There is no sign that he's on the injury report, but I'm keeping an eye on him. It feels like a day on the schedule where teams are more likely to just rest someone, just say, let's get to the All-Star break. We don't want to get guys hurt, especially on a back-to-back. I'm pretty sure it's true that last year, the first game that Steph Curry and Draymond Green rested the entire season was the day before the All-Star break on a back-to-back. This is just kind of something we have to look for. So with the Wizards, Denny Avdia, I think, would be one of the main guys, Corey Kispert. And then on Houston, I don't think Dennis Schroeder's playing. I don't think Eric Gordon's playing. I think KPJ may get back out there and play. So I'm not as excited about that situation. We just have to monitor it. But with the Wizards, I think they kind of just let the young guys go tonight, and I could see Kuzma sitting this one out just because of the back-to-back, and just let him get to the All-Star break and be healthy coming back for the second half.
Guys, we're going to poke over to the DK Sportsbook side of tonight's NBA games coming up right after we get a breakdown of this 10-game NHL slate on the horizon. Let's do that hockey, everybody. Good morning to the riveting RotoWire duo, Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes, along with my guy, Pete Jensen, good friend of mine on Instagram and host of the Fantasy on Ice podcast for NHL.com. We need you three for a DFS breakdown of tonight's 10-game NHL slate, which is highlighted by a clash between two sticky puck titans like Kong versus Godzilla, USA versus Canada, bacon versus ham, except it's AJ versus Paul. Pittsburgh visiting Toronto. Who wins and who is a DFS player you are targeting in this game, AJ?
Well, obviously the Penguins are going to
win.
Of course. Look, I'm not sure why it's even a question here. There's only 2 teams in the league with more points than the Penguins this season. That's the Avs and the Panthers. It's definitely not the Leafs. They also have the best road record in the league at 17-5-3. They're on a 4-game winning streak. Everything says Penguins in this one. Why would you think otherwise? Look, as far as DFS goes, as confident as I am that the Pens are going to win this game, and I really am, I would skip both these netminders because I'm expecting this game to easily hit the over tonight. I would use a combination of the forward from both clubs if you can fit them in. They're definitely pricey on both sides, but there's ways to do it. And the one concession I'll give to Paul is sort of a backhanded concession. Defensively, I would probably favor Morgan Riley over Letang on DFS tonight only because of the huge price difference. Letang has been better. He's going to be better, but he just costs so much more that it's probably not worth it to pay up if you're going to get some of these forwards in there. If you're completely fading this matchup for some unknown reason, then go with Letang if you can afford it. But, you got to get some of these forwards in here. They're all way, way up on the price tag. So maybe you go Morgan Riley just because he's cheaper.
All right, Paul, congratulations. You got the win last night with Canada over the United States, dude. But tonight, there's no way your boys can pull this out.
AJ versus Paul, huh? I thought that was last night in Beijing. Just a sec, I got to adjust my lighting.
Oh, sit down.
Gold, Canada, gold. As for tonight's big matchup, though, the Leafs are looking for revenge, having lost the first 2 games of the season series against the Pens, including their worst effort of the year. I think the big boys on both clubs will be fired up for this one. It's a measuring stick game for my club. I know the Pens have been the hottest team in the whole league for weeks, but the Leafs have been right behind them in that stretch. Matthews and Marner games have really grown this year. The Toronto PP best in the league. In terms of the best value up top, I think you got to go with Mitch Marner at $7,300. 20 points in his last 10 games, 47 shots on goal. That's career highs, I think. Never mind the last 10 games. Cheaper than Matthews, Crosby, and Gunso. The Pens' best bet is Malkin at $5,800. Even I'm insulted by that low price for their superstar. 10 points in his last 10 games played. If you're looking for value plays here, it's Michael Bunting for the Leafs, left wing on the top line, $3,900. Carter for the Pens, left wing on the second line, $4,200.
Pete, let's get an objective opinion here, an unbiased opinion. Which side do you fall in this game tonight, and who's a dude you target in DFS?
So I'll side with AJ here.
Yeah.
I knew win this. I can win this.
This is the most impressed that I've been by the Penguins probably since they were repeat champions. I think they're going to do damage in the playoffs this year. And as for this game, I just think they're more equipped than the Leafs to win this one when it's all said and done. But yeah, the way Sidney Crosby's playing, right, the more things change in the NHL, the more they stay the same, because Ovi's still the goal king, and Sidney Crosby over the past month of the season has been arguably the best player in any fantasy format, whether season long or DFS. 15 points in his past 10 games, 33 shots. The line with Gensel and Rust is as good of a line trio as anybody has out there. But I will agree on one point that Paul made, the Bunting move in terms of rostering him in DFS with those elite line mates. He's been very productive over the past 2 weeks. So I go a little Crosby spend up and a little value play on Michael Bunting, the rookie.
Hey, Pete, outside of this game of the century, who's a high-priced option you need to have in your lineup?
So I'm looking at two guys. I'm looking both at the wing position. Their prices have been rising, but they're still not that expensive. So Patrick Laine, $5,400, and then Alex Tuch, who's a little bit more expensive. Tuch has 37 shots on goal in his past 7 games, so extremely high shot volume. He's got a favorable opponent at home against the Ottawa Senators. Signature win the other day alert for the Buffalo Sabres. They beat the New York Islanders. I know the Islanders are on a downward trend, but the Sabres, since the Eichel trade, since they're getting healthy, they're certainly trending upward thanks to the top line of Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, and Jeff Skinner, and also Rasmus Dahlin. I think we've moved forward away from the Sabres being down in the dumps, and we've moved towards stack territory where you could actually consider logically stacking 2 Buffalo Sabres in your roster. I would personally go Tuch and Rasmus Dahlin on defense. You could certainly do Tuch with one of his line mates at the forward position as well.
Paul, high-priced option you like?
You know what? I have faded McDavid and Draisaitl long enough. They got a really good matchup against Anaheim tonight. So I think I'm going to save the 1,000 and go with Draisaitl among those two guys. I think it's going to be a point tonight for both of them, in fact. Ovechkin against Philadelphia, that looks like also one that's got a lot of meat on the bone. And Kyle Connor is shooting the lights out, and nobody's talking about him. He faces Seattle, a very favorable matchup there. So there's a whole bunch of guys that are on fire. Maybe the hottest guy, though, in the past week is Mark Scheifele. He also gets that matchup against Seattle and is only priced at $6,400. I think he's going to be in my lineup for sure.
All right, AJ.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything these guys said. The top of the range has all good matchups tonight. I mean, you could make an argument, like Paul said, McDavid or Draisaitl against Anaheim, Ovechkin going up against the Flyers. I love that one. Pasternak, Boston against the Islanders. Any number of these guys could really make sense here. I think overall, especially if you're going to go heavy in that Pens-Toronto game, I want to look a little bit further down. And so for me, I think Mika Zibanejad at $7K. I mean, I know $7K is not cheap, but compared to, Matthews, McDavid, and Ovechkin being over $9, it's a pretty good value there. He's only gone more than 1 game this season without a point. He didn't score in their last one, so he's due. And he's facing Detroit, who in the month of February has conceded 4.24 goals per game. Prime matchup to capitalize on the Rangers here, who I think might be able to fly under the radar a little bit when you consider all these other prime matchups at the top of the board.
Hey, Paul, you've been shining in this department here lately. Favorite value play? What do you got?
There's a whole bunch of choices down here, too. Ryan Strome against Detroit for $4,900. He's playing top 6 minutes, get some power play exposure there. I like the matchup against a Wings team that's not being very responsible in their own end of late. Vancouver and Brock Besser still enjoying the stardust from Bruce Boudreau. He's been on fire. Against San Jose, their goaltending and defense has been a bit disheveled. $4,900 the price tag there. The Edmonton turnaround of late, I think a big thing that has gone unnoticed is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is healthy, and he's back playing in the top 6 and featured on their power play as well. $4,700 for that play. And then Pavel Buchnevich against Montreal, a second-line winger, $4,600. I think it's points night for the Blues as they go into La Belle Province. And Zach Hyman, $4,300. Great value play. Top-line minutes with McDavid, $4,300 the price tag there.
AJ, who's your top value pick?
Well, I'm actually going to go back to the Penguins game, and it's because they're shuffling things up a little bit there. The second line has had some problems. Kasperi Kapanen and Evgeny Malkin just aren't gelling like they did last year. So they're going to move Jeff Carter out to the wing and put him on that second line. I love that in terms of utilizing him for DFS. He comes in at just $4,200. It's a great opportunity for him to play with, further up the lineup with some of the bigger stars here. And really, if you like that move, you could even consider Danton Heinen on the other side at just $2,500. Really cheap option as well. So it's not all stars, and I agree with what these guys said. Bunting is an option as well. I'd probably avoid Kerfoot, but there's some guys in the top 6 of these two teams that can produce with some value there.
All right, Pete, who can produce in value tonight?
Well, Paul mentioned one of them, but I like right now, since the coaching change for the Edmonton Oilers, Jay Woodcroft, they're 3-0-0 with him as the new bench boss, trending in the right direction. McDavid is playing with Zach Hyman and Jesse Puljujarvi. These guys are cheap right now in DraftKings, low 4,000 range. Hyman's got 11 shots over his past 3 games, including 2 goals since the coaching change. And then Puljujarvi's even a tad cheaper. But Hyman was a guy that they brought in the offseason to make a big difference for them, not only come playoff time, but just to protect McDavid, to kind of bring a new dimension to the best player in the league we can all agree on. So I think it's good to see Hyman playing with McDavid again. I don't think they gave him a fair shake. Dave Tippett didn't, but Jay Woodcroft is doing that. So I would roster Zach Hyman tonight. And then one other guy, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Keep an eye on defense to see if Quinn Hughes comes back. If he's not back, OEL is on power play 1 for Vancouver and is showing signs of a bounce back right now. So I've had my eye on him.
Incredible work, you three. All eyes will be on the Penguins and Toronto tonight, and I'm sure we'll have an entertaining segment with you guys coming up tomorrow, depending on the outcome. We will talk to everybody tomorrow, you guys in this segment, but we still have one more to go in this show because I know a lot of you have been emailing me. I've received millions of them because a lot of you have been missing millionaire contests because the football season is over. But I don't have any fear here because NASCAR is here. We have a massive millie maker for this week's Daytona 500 going down on Sunday. $25 to enter. Take your shot at that $1 million top prize. We've also got special promos if you enter during the week. So like if you submit a lineup today, you scored 10 DK dollars if an even number car wins. Yeah, the entire race. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, on and on. Go check it out in the lobby right now and listen to Pierce Dietrich break down the salaries in this week's Price Check.
Welcome to the Price Check. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Let's look at the salaries for Daytona. Whose salary jumped up this week? Justin Haley. An average salary last season of $5,400. He's up to $7,600 with 4 Xfinity Plate Track wins and a Cup Series Plate Track win. He's nothing short of a Plate Track wizard. Bubba Wallace, average salary of $6,700. He's up to $8,300. He's the reigning Talladega champ because of rain. But he has 7 top 15s in the last 9 at Daytona. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., average salary $6,800 up to $7,900. This is season 7 of the Price Check. That's right, 7 years of Ricky Stenhouse takes. My family is so proud. He does have 2 plate track wins. Whose salary dropped this week? Harrison Burton, $7,900 down to $6,200. The Peter Principle says people are promoted to the level of incompetence. He's well beyond that. Landon Hassel, average salary last season of $7,200 down to $5,600. The popular underdog is back in the Cup Series with a shot this weekend, but if the Landon Castle is crowded, maybe consider a less popular punt play. Martin Truex Jr., average salary of $9,500 down to $8,800. Statistically speaking, the worst plate racer in the history of NASCAR. Sneaky leverage play or pure galaxy brain. Favorite play of the week, Brad Kozlowski, $8,200. New car, new team. One thing is constant, he's a great plate racer. He should have won the Daytona 500 last season. He did win at Talladega. He also finished second at Talladega last season. Denny Hamlin, $10,500. When it's all said and done, he will be the second best plate racer in history. He's not better than Dale, but he's on another level compared to the rest of the drivers in this field. All right, guys, check out DK Nation for all your DFS information and needs. If you have NASCAR questions, find me on Twitter at @RaceForThePrize. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Catch me on DK Live.
Good stuff, Pierce Dietrich. Thanks, man. Looking forward to this weekend. Back for more here. Another healthy dose of basketball with DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne and Nick Fryer. We are calling this segment NBA Trendsetter, so which trends that bettors need to know about on each game tonight. 5 games on this NBA slate, and also which bet you are betting. Heat at the Hornets here. All right, so the Heat, now 5-point favorites, going for a 5th straight road win, dudes. Hornets 2-8 in their last 10, 3rd meeting this season. Heat have won both games, so what you doing here, Nick?
Well, I think when you look at this slate in general, right, it's a small slate and everything, or right before the All-Star break and everything. We were talking a little before about on the DFS side how there may be concerns with some of the top players where they may not be getting as much action, limiting minutes, kind of going on vacation early. So for me, that is kind of leaning me towards some of the props more so tonight. And when I look at that Heat-Hornets game, of course, Jimmy Butler has a big impact on that game. And I think Bam Adebayo, as much as I do like him on the DFS side regardless, I do want to wait on his props until we get the update on Jimmy Butler status. My favorite prop right now in that game is Terry Rozier going over 20.5 points. I talked about it a little bit earlier how he's been averaging right around 20 shots per game since Gordon Hayward's been out. I know it's only 5 games, but Gordon Hayward's still out, so that's all that matters. And about half of those have been around 3-pointers too. He's getting to the free throw line a little bit lately too. So the point is he's getting a lot of volume. He's getting the minutes, of course, as well too. And I think the biggest focus for Miami tonight, like any time that you're playing Charlotte, is going to be stopping LaMelo Ball. So for Terry Rozier, that's going to make a big difference for him. The last time that he saw the Heat, he was 5 points under going the over on this total, but Hayward was in that game too, and he wasn't getting the same kind of volume. So I think when you're looking at betting this game, Terry Rozier's points prop, taking the over on that is the way to go.
All right, Gary, what's the way to go here?
Yeah, I'm not afraid of the spread in this game. I just don't think the Hornets have it, and I trust the Heat. Even if Jimmy Butler doesn't play, I think Kyle Lowry and Bam Adebayo are enough to beat this Hornets team, a team that has a -6 rating. They've been outscored by 6 points per 100 possessions across their last 10 games. It's just been bad. Whereas the Heat are 5-0 ATS their last 5 games as a road favorite. The Hornets are also 0-8 OTS their last 8 home games. They just have not been able to do anything in Charlotte, so I will take the Heat -5 here.
All right, let's go Wizards at the Nets. The Nets are also 5-point favorites, home favorites, so they've won 2 in a row. They're back on track, baby, after losing 8 straight, including last night over the Knicks. So, Gary, which bet is worth targeting here?
So I'm going to go to the props on this one. And I know Matt Meiselman was a little worried that Kyle Kuzma might sit out tonight because he's just had to take on so much volume lately. If Kuzma plays, I think he will. Again, we have to really, really specify here that there has been no indication that Kyle Kuzma will not play in this game as of right now. I like Kuzma to go over 4.5 assists at plus money. This is plus 120 right now. Kuzma's not only the best positional rebounder on this team and their top scorer, but right now he's playing faux point guard for a team that just doesn't have any point guards left, or great point guards left. He's gone over this number in 3 of his last 4 games. He's also averaging a team-high 9.5 potential assists in that 4-game span. So at plus money, I think this is a really enticing prop.
Anything enticing to you, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, Andre Drummond's a guy I like a lot tonight going up against the Wizards. When we talked about the Nets, obviously I had them not covering against the Kings earlier in the week, Then the Kings fell flat on their face. No Kyrie Irving in that game, of course. No KD, didn't matter. And then the Nets go to the Nets go to the Garden, and then after they fall behind big, then the Knicks somehow end up choking. Which, I mean, it's the Knicks, so understandable. But still, I thought they would have got the job done there because, again, the Nets are without their two best guys. So I feel a little bit uncomfortable when it comes to talking about the spread here. Andre Drummond, to go back to that, his props, his points prop right now is at 10.5. I like the over on that one as well. You know, the Wizards, again, they're not good against defending opposing bigs. They've given up the second most points per game to the position this season, to the center position, that is. And Tristan Thompson, like I mentioned earlier, he went off for 17 points in 21 minutes, and then he got waived so that he could go play for the Bulls. That happened just yesterday. And the Wizards, the over goes... the over hits in Wizards games when they're on the second leg of a back-to-back. It's 6 out of the 7 times that's happened this season. And the Wizards are the eighth worst team in defensive rating too. So I like Drummond at least getting 11 tonight.
All right, some great trends you mentioned there, which is why we called this segment NBA Trendsetters. Guys, let's go straight here to Sixers and Bucks. So the Bucks, 6.5-point home favorites. Giannis, as we mentioned at the top of the show, just put up a 50-point masterpiece against the Pacers. Philly still without Harden, just got throttled by Boston. So Gare Bear, where are you going?
Do want to say quickly, we just got a report out of Miami that it looks like Jimmy Butler is going to play tonight. He's on track to play, according to Eric Spoelstra. So do with that what you will. Going to Bucks 76ers, the prop that really stands out to me on this particular game is Tobias Harris under 1.5 three-pointers made. He's just stopped shooting threes. I mean, Philadelphia isn't a team that shoots a lot of threes anyway, and they're going to shoot a whole lot less of them now that Seth Curry is not part of this team, but he's only having 22.6% of his field goal attempts be three-pointers this season. That's the lowest total in a while, and only 27% of those attempts have come from the corner, which is a career low mark for Tobias Harris. He didn't even attempt a three in that game against Boston, which is mind-blowing to me. I mean, Tobias Harris is a pretty good three-point shooter, so I know it's juiced up a little bit, but I just don't think he's going to make 2 3-pointers in this game because he might only attempt 2 3-pointers.
Nick, what do you like here?
I know I said I was going to be prop heavy for this one, for the whole slate, but I like the Bucks actually in the spread on this one at -6.5. I know if you go and look at their spread numbers, they are sub 500 against the spread. And I know that the Sixers are a little bit better, but they're also still sub 500 against the spread. But I'm not as interested in the Sixers numbers right now because Seth Curry's gone, Andre Drummond, for whatever role you want to give him, he's gone as well. And James Harden isn't playing yet. And we saw what happened against the Celtics the other day. I don't expect that to happen. It was a 48-point win for the Celtics. Obviously, that should not happen again tonight to the 76ers. But when you look at what the Bucks have done offensively recently, in 4 of their last 6 games, they've scored 128 points or more. Giannis did not play in one of the games where they didn't score that many points. And then Philly, since the trade deadline, I know it's only been a few games, but they've been anywhere from 103 to 87 points. So right now, I know that we're thinking that Giannis might get a lot of minutes. I still like him on the DFS side, but this could end up being a pretty comfortable win for the Bucks tonight. So I do like them at -6.5.
Guys, that's all the time we have for this show. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for the past hour, Nick and Garion. Also, everyone who watched, we love it. We mean it. We're going to wrap up the week with another 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time edition of The Sweat. Tomorrow, I will be here on this same exact desk. We're going to have Pierce colliding with Jeff, talking NASCAR. Rumor has it Jeff's going to be talking some all-star NBA bets, guys. Yeah, real talk. All right, Madden starts at noon. The slate tonight at 5 o'clock. On the DraftKings YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch pages. I'll see you tomorrow morning.